So we promised you guys part 2 of this awesome topic of bad behavior, patterns in bad behavior. Last week we talked about the cluster B personality disorders and what that kind of means. And we want to go in more depth of just general bad behavior, volatile, toxic, explosive kind of behavior that we see all over social media nowadays. Right, Aaron?
Don't be ratchet. That's a new word I learned. I studied this, not the word necessarily.
He did that too.
I did that too. But first I was studying these videos. I'm watching all these videos. I just put in TikTok, people behaving badly. And there's no shortage of these videos. They're everywhere. And this word kept popping up, ratchet. And I thought, well, okay, what is this? So I looked it up, Urban Dictionary, and then I tried to okay, it means this uncontrolled or messy.
Loud, messy, volatile behavior.
That's what how they're using it. And I thought, how did you come to this using ratchet? My ratchet is a wrench that you use to work on your lawnmower or your car. So I didn't understand, and I still am not clear on the correlation between this tool, ratchet, or another, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's an old movie. There was a nurse there, Nurse Ratchet, but again, that doesn't make sense that it would be using this term. Anyway, I have no idea how this wrench ratchet became the euphemism for this behavior, but it did. So we're going to talk about that today. Not the word, but the behavior. And when you see this bad behavior, what does it mean? How can you avoid this happening to you, where you become one of these videos that go viral because you're acting out of sorts? And how do you help your friends who may be exhibiting some of this type of behavior as well? So that's what we're going to cover today. And we had a long discussion on whether or not to actually use that word, because it has a lot of racial connotations to it, which I didn't recognize until I learned it this past few days. I'd heard it in passing, but I studied it.
And Doc Jess wants to keep her license, so I begged him, let's not title this one that word, please.
So we take the disclaimer first. That's the word that we found. But what I really want to focus on, you guys, is the behavior. And we can see this happening a lot. So welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm your host, Sergeant Q, and with me, as always, Doc Jess.
Hi, you guys. Thanks for being here. Welcome.
Still a licensed mental health professional.
And we'll see what happens after this episode. Oh gosh.
I'm burning up.
So here's what I see. I see behavior patterns, and you guys are going to recognize these immediately. All you got to do is go to TikTok and be like, people behaving badly. That's all I get. And tons of stuff comes up. Fast food restaurants are notorious for this type of behavior. And
Customer?
yes.
Yeah.
No, not always. No, not always.
He is way too excited.
Not always. There were some bangers out there where it was employees that were being crazy.
Well, let's talk about the typical sequence of what this bad behavior looks like.
Right. Okay, so this typically what happens. Somebody does something and they feel, the other person feels like there's been an injustice done to them. So it's usually on both sides. Somebody has a behavior and this person over here feels like this is an injustice. So they have a behavior. Now this person feels like there's an injustice. And so then we just start seeing this stack on top of each other.
Yeah. And it always comes down to ego and self-image.
100%. And it was crazy because they couldn't be wrong. They both had to be right. And here's what I saw happen. This is what I saw because I started studying this. What I saw is people going into fight or flight. I saw all rational thought process ending almost immediately. As soon as somebody confronted somebody about bad behavior, it was on. Both of those amygdalas were popping off, and everybody in that scenario is now, you watch the whole crowd just kind of step back as these two people start to go at it. And you could watch because there was no rational thought process happening. Yeah. And one of the incidents I watched was, it was a road rage. One lady hit another lady's car. They pull over, the police show up, And both of them are in that fight or flight. You can see it plain as day. As the police officer's trying to talk to both of these people, they're both having trouble speaking. They're not getting their words out. They're not having a lot of rational thought because all that emotion is taking over. But these two people handled it totally different. So the one who stayed in her car, she was able to somewhat articulate what happened. It took her a little bit, and she kept apologizing. I'm trying to say, just give me a minute to think, and she was kind of going through it as she's having those big emotions pop up. Now, the other person in the
perpetrator,
who's the perpetrator who hit this person on purpose. You can see it on the camera. On purpose, hits them, and now wants to be the victim. Jumps out of her car, claims to the police officer that these people were chasing me and I have to try and get away, and all of these things. And when that didn't work out, then it was the race card came out, and when that didn't work out, it was all of these other things that she was doing to absolve herself of any responsibility for her bad behavior. And you watch both of them be in this intense emotional situation, and one handled it well and the other did not. Now, I believe that the one who didn't handle it well, it's because nobody ever showed her how. I believe that this person probably was not the first time they acted this way, where they got wound up really quick, had this explosive experience, and was able to verbally shut down other people as a way to absolve themselves of responsibility. Because nobody had that was a survival instinct that this person had, and you could watch it happen in real time. It was a survival instinct. She wasn't having rational thought. Because even as she's getting arrested and put into the car, the police officer is telling her, I don't want to arrest you, but you cannot act this way. You cannot threaten the other people. You cannot do these things. She didn't have to go to jail. And he kept telling her that. But he ends up putting her in the car, and he's super chill the whole time, because even calls the boyfriend to come pick up the car so he could take the car, doesn't have to get towed. And she's still just so worked up and so in that emotion that she cannot have rational thought. Even her boyfriend's trying to tell her, like, hey, if you would just give the police officer your license, like he doesn't have to, he has to take you to jail because you won't identify yourself. You just committed 2 crimes. And even the boyfriend's trying to have this conversation, and she still cannot handle it because that part of the brain was shutting down.
Well, and
It's a really long story.
No, but I want to correlate it because every single one of us has experienced that level of brain shutdown.
Yes.
Think about if you're married or been married or gotten into a heated argument with your spouse or somebody, and you are going around and around and around and can't remember what you originally started fighting about. That's one of these moments. Yeah, it's because you're operating solely in your emotional brain and your logical brain is out. That's when your amygdala that's when your prefrontal cortex is hijacked and you cannot think logically.
And I want to say it's not their fault. When they're in that stage, it's not, because the brain's not functioning right. But allowing themselves to get to that point, that is their fault. Because you can't have a rational conversation with that person at that point. It's not possible. You have to get them out of that emotional state into a cognitive state so you can have a rational conversation. Because at that point, it doesn't matter what you say to them. It will, until they can bring that down, the energy level down, you're never going to be, the brain's just not going to process it. The brain cannot process it.
That's why the number one thing when I do marriage counseling, the number one thing we go over with every couple is these 10 rules of engagement for communication that my husband, Billy, and I learned when we went to counseling, marriage counseling. So we took it from her and we try to share it with everybody because it's such gold. But it's these 10 rules, and every single person we've shared it with is like, oh, I wish I would have had these my whole life, because they're so simple, so plain. And if you're ever above a 6 in your emotional thermometer, your amygdala is taking over and there's no logical thinking. We're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So even just getting in the pattern of knowing yourself, self-awareness, am I too emotionally elevated right now to have this conversation or this confrontation, or what do I need to do?
Here's what happens. Your amygdala has 3 options: fight, flight, or freeze. That's it. That's all that part of the brain can actually do. So when you get into that amygdala hijack state, you can't think or process or have a rational conversation because your brain, that little tiny part of your brain has taken over and its only job is to preserve life. And so that's what it's doing. It's seeing that other person, that other part of the situation being as a direct threat to their life, even though rationally we can recognize it's not, but that amygdala pops up and that's how they feel. That becomes their reality. And there's nothing you can do to change it. They have to bring that level back down.
And now that I'm thinking, I'm going to totally embarrass myself because I don't know the actual term, but there is a fourth F that has come about, and it's, I think, like fuzzy or something like that. Not fuzzy like a furry, but it's like friendly to the people that have been raised with the coping mechanism of people pleasing. And so when they go into a fight, when their amygdala takes over, they have that fourth F now that they're starting to see some people fawn. Yes. So I'm going to fawn.
You're going to
Fawn.
people please.
People please.
People
Yeah.
please. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're trying to, again, preserve life.
Preserve life. I was raised, in order for me to be safe, I had to please. I had to fawn over these people in order for me to stay alive and safe. Yes. Yeah. So interesting little nugget.
Yeah, learn something. That's great. I'm gonna do some more research on that. But it makes as soon as you said it, it made complete sense. Yeah, I get that. I understand that. You can see that. So that's the brain is shutting down, not having rational thought, can't process, can't see what's really happening because all it's trying to do is preserve life. And I watch this happen in real time in multiple of these videos. The majority of the time, it was both people getting to that state. And the one that I talked about, I shared specifically because you could see the one, they both got there, and then the one was able to self-regulate and the other one wasn't.
Because they were separated.
But here's what I wonder. And I don't know, it's totally unscientific, but my observation was that there were two people in that car. The one who was to self-regulate faster than the other one. Could it be that having that other person, they felt more safe in that situation?
More safe, more accountable,
Maybe both.
more. Yeah.
That was really I mean, when you look at both of them, they looked like they're both on the same side of the social economical scale. They both had the same, initial reactions, but the one with two people in the car was able to self-regulate faster.
Well, yeah. I mean, human nature and tons of other research, right? Like your squad mentality.
Yeah.
Two are always better than one in most situations.
Right.
So that's something else you're probably gonna research.
Yeah, because it was very unique to watch that. But you can see people behaving badly, and so sometimes they're called Karens, right? People going out and you see this happening where people are homeowners association, and it just gets out of control, or parking spots. Oh, there's another one. I watched this other one where this lady, she has a car and a motorcycle, and so she can have two parking spots. Literally, she can have two parking spots because she has two vehicles. They're both registered and she's allowed to. She's a single person living in this apartment complex and she has two vehicles. So she can have two parking spots. But this other lady was so angry at her because she parks her bike and her car in the same spot. So when she leaves for the day and takes her car, the bike is still there and is taking up a spot. And this lady didn't think that was fair. And she goes haywire over this thing, like foaming at the mouth.
But if you just look at it logically, she's actually saving you a spot.
That's right. And that's what she's trying to tell this person. But she cannot.
We got to show that one.
See that? She cannot understand it. And as the observer, you can see that she just completely loses it. The other lady is calm the whole time and just trying like, hey, I'm really sorry, but I have two of these. They're both registered. Well, you can't do that. You can, all of these things. She's like, well, I pay for these. Like they're registered, this whole thing. And I only actually take up one spot, and I just parked both of them there. But the lady it was the closest to her building or something. So she thought that, she could never park there because this lady's bike was always there or the car was always there, which again, if she parked one over, I think would be more unfair. And she was trying to be, Anyway, those are the types of things
like a lovely person.
Yes. So here's some things that I saw that were very common in all of these situations. Number one is that when people were confronted with evidence or proof of their behavior getting called out, they felt very threatened. That ego and that self-image, it felt like a direct attack against them. And that amygdala started to fire off because they wanted to preserve life. So instead of calming down, they go directly into that fight or flight mode. So fighting would be yelling, gaslighting, making excuses, blaming other people, or flight, which would be denial, blame shifting, or claiming victimhood. They were the victim. Oh, that's in that other video from last week. I'm the victim. I'm the victim. I'm like, you're the perpetrator.
Yeah. I was just that. I was thinking about that too.
Right?
I love that job.
So that's what you see happening. So those are behaviors that you start to see. So some of the other outward signs that you're going to see voice starting to raise. You're going to see deflecting statements like, why are you filming me? You can't film me. You're harassing me. So you're going to see those types of things start to happen. You're going to see this emotional flood of tears or outrage start to happen. And you're going to see a refusal to recognize logic. So those are some of the things that you're going to see right away in these videos. These were the common trends that I saw in all of these videos. And I know you guys have seen these videos, and I guarantee every one of you has seen this in real life or been a part of one of these situations in real life as well. Okay, so this is exactly what's happening in your brain when this happens. This is not a real threat to your life, but your brain recognizes it as being a real threat. So the amygdala turns on and fires off adrenaline and cortisol. So adrenaline goes to your muscles. It makes your heart beat like crazy. It increases your rate of your breath. And what it's doing is it's hyper oxygenating the blood to get to your major muscle groups, getting ready to fight or run. So that's what adrenaline does. It's like a superpower. It gets you super strong very fast. And cortisol, this is the part that causes your brain to start to shut down because cortisol coats all these neural receptors that it doesn't need in the moment. So it's going to coat those and shut them down so you become tunnel vision, hyper-focused on the threat that's right in front of you. And so those are the two parts of the two chemicals that are going to affect your brain and your body when the amygdala kicks off. So that's how it works inside your brain. Jess, you want to tell us a little bit about the psychology side of this? Is that's the physical side?
Yeah.
What's the psychological side?
Yes. And as you were talking, I do want to kind of jump back a half a step and give some examples of this bad behavior or this dysregulation of emotions. Because a lot of us go to that volatile, angry man who gets big and loud, and women do it too. But I'm for to give you a picture. The man, this is happening in their body, right? We got that adrenaline and cortisol, and their normal reaction is to blow up and get big because that's how they're self-preserving. Women tend to cry when they get that combination. Okay. And the world looks at it as, oh, look at this poor thing over here. He's making her cry. When at the end of the day, sure, one is going to have more consequences to that behavior, but they're still equally dysfunctional. Women, my challenge to you is if you cry all the time when conflict arises, I'm telling you, you don't have proper regulation of your emotions. Does that make sense?
Jess, it absolutely does. And you know what's crazy? None of the videos that I watched that came up showed that side of it.
The crying.
The crying.
No, because that's not click.
But it's
You let it click.
right. It's everybody getting big. But in my personal experience, I can tell you I've witnessed personally far more of that crying behavior than the blow up side.
Yeah. So, and what made me think of this is when you said, right, when that person gets in that place and they're not thinking logically, right? The adrenaline and the cortisol is going and they're just becoming reactionary. And you go as far as saying, like, once it's to that point, it's not really their fault. Same with crying. When that adrenaline, that cortisol, when they get to the point of crying, that's all their body knows how to do to release that adrenaline cortisol, right? And so it's incredibly destructive to be loud, volatile, and verbally abusive like that. And I just want to bring some attention to it's still wrong and weak and emotionally unintelligent to always cry when you feel that way. So you have some work to do as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't even thought about that. That is a great point. I see that. And something common that I hear is that women use tears as a weapon. That's how a lot of people see it.
And even if they're not trying to, it is that I have to survive. This is my survival technique. I'm having these feelings. I don't know what to do with them. I'm gonna cry. And that just means you're emotionally immature and unintelligent.
And so what we were trying to do here is we're not calling you out to make you feel bad. We're calling you out so you recognize it, and we're going to show you how to grow from it.
Yes. Yes.
Both sides of that.
Yeah.
Because once you're in that state, you're still accountable for your actions.
Yeah.
But you won't be able to control them because your brain's not functioning right. So how do we stop you from getting to that level?
Yeah.
Because once you're at that level, now you're still accountable for everything that you do, but you cannot, there's nothing that you can do to self-regulate when you're at that point. So this is why they have murder, but then they have a different case where it's
Caught up in the passion.
yeah,
Manslaughter.
not manslaughter, it's accidental. So it may be it's another type of murder. It's not premeditated murder, but it's like a crime of passion.
Yeah.
Because they recognize that there is a difference. Even the law recognizes there's a difference between planning out to murder somebody and getting caught up in your feelings.
Yeah.
And then murdering somebody as a crime of passion. So they're still both held accountable. There's just a different level of accountability with those two. So even the law recognizes this. What neuroscience is now being able to prove as fact. So just so you guys understand what that looks like.
Yeah.
Now, what are some things, Jess, that are happening in the neuroscience side?
Yeah. So psychological roots to this kind of behavior. The first one is going to be kind of the ego, the heightened or sensitive ego, narcissistic type trait, right? This is where this person's built their identity over being right, being good, and being caught in this kind of behavior or this confrontation threatens their identity. So instead of in the moment, taking a moment of self-reflection, that adrenaline cortisol goes in and you become volatile and reactionary. Another psychological root is what you've discovered is shame intolerance.
When I studied this. So break that down. This is fascinating to me. I learned this. I learned this. It was fascinating and I recognized it immediately. So break it down to them just like you did to me in the pre-show.
Yeah. So shame intolerance is the root really of most narcissistic personality disorders. And that is literally intolerance to the emotion of shame. And so we all know, we have all experienced shame. Okay. From drinking too much one night and making a whole bunch of mistakes and embarrassing yourself when you're trying to get your life back right. The whole next day, that overwhelming dark cloud of shame.
Guilt and shame,
Yeah. Or common getting caught in an adulterous relationship or cheating. That insane amount of shame is very hard to deal with. And neuroscience and psychology, it's coming out that shame is the hardest emotion to deal with, far harder than the other uncomfortable emotions, right? We're taught growing up there's bad and good emotions. That's not good, right? There's uncomfortable and comfortable emotions. That's what they are, right? Because if you think about the 6 or 7 core emotions, 2 of them are good. Happiness and being content type. The rest would fall under bad. Sad, fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, despair. Like the people, label those as bad when really what's our hope then if there's 6 or 7 core emotions and only 1 or 2 of them are good, right? So we have to normalize uncomfortable feelings and emotions, right? One way that I like to do this is normalize apologizing, especially in your homes with your kids. Like, man, I messed up. Please forgive me. This is what I'm going to do to be better, right? Because if we're normalizing that vulnerability to be able to be okay with being wrong, you're teaching your children how to grow up and not be so afraid of that feeling of shame. the majority of people who do become narcissistic personality disorder grow up with so much childhood trauma that aren't taught how to have a healthy relationship with these uncomfortable feelings, and then they self-preserve, and their coping mechanism is the second shame comes up, project, 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 blame, blame, blame. And they actually justify in their minds and think they're justified in whatever behavior that they did because that feeling came up, if that makes sense.
Well, it does to me because I saw this right away. And I was like, oh my gosh, it made me think of a guy that used to work for me and how he would do this to everybody. And so that's what it really popped into my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, this shame and tolerance. And I feel that too. Like, I don't want to be shamed. I don't want people to bring up my embarrassing past. I don't run from it. And when people bring it up, I'm like, yep, I did that. I made some mistakes and I'm growing from it. I just had to do it today where there was some stuff that was put out about me on the internet and it wasn't accurate. And I've had to go back since and correct that every time it comes up. And it literally happened to me today where somebody was doing a Google search on me and they found some stuff. And so they put it out and it's nothing terrible, right? It's nothing that's like damning, but I still have to go back and correct that and be like, hey, look, that's not accurate. Use these terms. That was a marketing agency that put that stuff out. It's not untrue, but it's not accurate. Here's a more accurate thing. So I just had to go and do that explanation.
Clean up.
And I have to do that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not just there, but in my life. Why? Because my mouth gets me in trouble. You guys are lucky. I have a great editor and a co-host who doesn't let me say crazy stuff.
I try.
I'm not trying to be offensive or hurtful. It just, there's that filter that you guys have. I don't have that. So I need people that become my filter and have grace for me, my family specifically.
Yeah. Which is going to lead us into the next root, psychological root, which would be like learned chaos or a trauma response. And so when my husband and I were first met, I thought before I spoke, and he would watch and he'd be like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, I'm thinking about what I want to say. He's like, you what? And I was like, I'm thinking about what I want to say and how I want to say it. And he's like, is that real? Is that a real thing? You do that? He watched me for months. Like, wow, I can't believe people actually do that, right? Because he has that highway brain, like the thought, and then comes out, like Pastor Matt says, like, oh, can I grab it? Nope, it's already out, right? And I was raised in a home where my parents sat me down and said, hey, you're feeling this emotion right now. It's really uncomfortable and it's okay. I feel that way too. I'm validated. I'm understood. And I'm coached how to properly handle that uncomfortable emotion for the next time. Okay. I have a very, very rare childhood. Okay.
That's that feel, felt, found that we talked about last week.
Yeah. Which is why I'm such a huge advocate on parenting, because 95% of these problems can be eliminated with healthy, growing, good parenting.
Here's what you guys got to recognize right now. Jessica and I had two totally different childhoods. Mine is the exact opposite of that. I can't remember any time that my parents sat me down to talk to me about anything.
And my husband too. We always share that.
Right? They were yelling at me. I was in trouble. Never heard them apologize. So we have these totally different experiences. We both experienced trauma, which put us into the same place. And then we've both grown from it. So this whole nurture versus nature is both. We both had different upbringings. And we had similar experiences, and we have both been able to grow and become successful. So don't sit there in your little pity party and think like, well, you don't know my life. You don't know what I went through. You're right. I don't. But what I do know is it doesn't matter because you can grow from it if you choose. Because we had two totally different situations. Yes. And then we had similar experiences, and we've both grown and become very successful since then. So don't sit there and use that as an excuse. Okay, sidebar.
Yeah. So Jessica, you're so good at communicating. Good for you. But then of how you were raised. Yeah, exactly. I had good parenting. And you know what I did when I became a parent? I read more books on how to be even a better parent. So I had so many good foundational tools to work with to begin with, but it still wasn't good enough for me. I still wanted to be better. So regardless of what background you have, you can always be better.
It's not about perfection. No, it's about progress. So you could all make progress. I didn't know how to be a parent. I was never parented well. I'm part of the feral generation, Gen X. Just didn't exist. And so then I had to figure out, how do I be a parent now? And I made a ton of mistakes and screwed my kids all up, but I learned how to apologize. And I have decent relationships with my kids now because I was able to apologize. I was able to recognize that I did things wrong and apologize. My son called me. We don't have a great relationship with him, but he called me. He was upset because I didn't teach him how to do certain things, like work on his truck. I said, yeah, man, I didn't teach you because I didn't know. I'm 46 years old. I'm just learning how to do these things because of YouTube. So the best thing, I'm going to tell you what you do: go on YouTube. And there's going to be people on there who know how to do this, and they're going to show you how to do it. That's what I just did. So you can be mad at me and blame me, or you can take the initiative and learn how to do it. That's exactly. I'm at 46 and I'm learning the same thing, how to fix my car that you're trying to fix at 25. Okay. So those are the two different mindsets right there. You could stay in the victim and blame everybody else, or you could say, hey, this happened to me and now I need to learn how to progress forward.
So some common defense mechanisms when we are faced with this ego and this reality of like, shame or guilt, or something poked me, hurt me, core value is being challenged, justice. I feel like I've been like, what's the word? Wronged, unjust treatment or whatnot. Some common defense mechanisms, one would be loud. You get louder, right? And this is a dominance display. And this is a learned behavior. If somebody in your life showed you how to do this to get your way, or you had to do it to get your way growing up because nobody was there to say, hey, you're feeling this emotion and this is how you properly walk through it. Okay. Next one is blame shifting. And this is what we call projection. So I'm going to project the guilt onto somebody else, because if you look at them, then you're not looking at me. And then we have the refusal to listen. This is called avoidance. I'm setting a boundary. This is kind of to help like cope and try to survive that ego from collapsing. Then we have crying or victimizing, and this is a reversal, and this is flipping the power dynamic onto the other person. And then gaslighting, like, you're harassing me. Well, I'm a police officer and I always have a body cam on for your protection and my protection. Like, it is what it is. And it's because they want to do that to rewrite the narrative, to keep control over the narrative. So
now we see this manifest also in companies. Managers will start to display some of these toxic behaviors. And this is a real problem. It's so bad that MIT decided to study it. And they found out the number one reason why people quit their job, surprise, surprise,
toxic work environment.
People like their job. They don't like the people they're working for. And it's because these types of people are showing this behavior. They're modeling this. And it's probably because nobody taught them how to do it any different. I see a lot of people, when they get promoted into a management position, say, well, what kind of training did you have? And they'll tell you all the training they had on the technical skills.
Yeah.
But none of the training on what we call soft skills, how to manage people. They know how to manage the process. Yeah. Nobody's ever showed them how to manage the people and manage their own emotions. And this is something that I really focus on in my company. It's one of the reasons that we're so successful and we have a low turnover rate. We just went through this in a meeting that I had a couple weeks ago, where we have a new person. They've been in a supervisor role, but now they're in a larger supervisor role, where they're not just in charge of one or two people on a project. They're in charge of, district. And they're struggling with managing that. Now, there's a lot of different things that go into it, but what I was dealing with were this person's supervisors. So supervising the supervisor. And they came to me like, how do I help this person? Because this is the behavior. It's not acceptable. They need to be operating at this level. And I just let them hear. I heard about. So I know how you feel. I've dealt with this a lot. I felt that way too. Frustrated, like maybe they're not the right person. Maybe we should, find somebody different, or put them back into where their comfort zone is. I felt that way too. But I found that if I invest a little more time and energy into that person, they will have success.
Feel felt found.
So I did that to them. And then I said, this is what I want. What I just did is what I want you to do with them. So they were complaining about the workload and people not doing their job. And you thought, well, they can't handle it as a manager then because you've got to be able to suck it up and get through this. But just like I could have said that to you, like figure it out. That would not have helped you. But I walked you through this feel, felt, found. I know how you feel. I felt the same way. Here's the example. And this is what I found that was successful. And so I had them walk through that and role play that with me. Say, okay, so now go back to this individual and try that. And then when it works, because it does, you're going to teach them how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's how I've been able to create such a cohesive unit inside of my company that keeps things running. I don't run my company. I absolutely do not. I have not in over a decade. Okay. My people run my company. All I do is three things. I educate them, which is what I did. I shared that. And then I empower them, but I gave them the tool and told them to go use it. And then I'm going to encourage them along the way. So in the coming weeks, I'm going to be checking in to see how that progressed. Yeah. So the same thing we do here, we educate you, we empower you, and we encourage you. I do that because it works. I've been doing it in my company for over a decade. So feel, felt, found is the tool that I use a lot to help mitigate that. And I use that here, not always successfully, but successfully with my family. When one of my family members is telling me about something that I did, usually that is inappropriate, say stupid stuff, I have to deal with that. I have to apologize. I know how you feel. I felt the same way.
Yeah.
I found when we're trying to help them navigate through something. So I use these tools too, not just with my company, but with my own family. So what are some other tools that people can use, Jess, when they find themselves getting worked up to be able to disengage and bring it back down?
Yeah.
And I'm listening because I need some of this stuff.
Yeah. One of my biggest tools that I use on a constant basis with most of my clients, that was such a huge tool for me in my post-traumatic growth, was the RAIN technique. And it's a acronym, right? RAIN.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that in a while. So break it down.
Yeah, so it's recognize, allow, investigate, nurture, or not take personal. And so it's like letting the rain wash over you. So the R is recognize, and you want to say out loud recognize what you're feeling. What is that feeling that you're feeling? And say it out loud. And then the A is you're going to allow yourself to feel that feeling for 2 to 5 minutes. Okay. And you're going to set, if you can, an audible alarm. Okay. So we have emotions for a reason. And if we just shove them down all the time, it's not healthy for our bodies. We're not going to regulate those emotions in a healthy way. And it's going to wreak havoc on our guts. You're going to bubble over and blow up. And it's a motion for disaster. And so allowing yourself those 2 to 5 minutes to just feel whatever it is you recognize you're feeling: anger, depression, sadness, agony, frustration, even joy. You can do this even with good things because we want to draw attention to good things too. But right. So then when that audible timer goes off, you're training that prefrontal cortex to pause. I hear the timer go off. I recognized what I was feeling. I allowed my body to feel that emotion, but now I'm going to investigate. Okay. So if that cortisol and adrenaline is still pulsing pretty crazy, then I'm going to investigate with a grounding technique. Okay. We have one that Q uses a lot, especially from his book, is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that's, I name 5 things that I can see, 4 things that I can touch, 3 things that I can hear, 2 things that I can smell, and 1 thing that I can taste. And another grounding technique could be, if you feel like you're investigating your body, is doing a mindfulness body scan. And so they have them on YouTube where the narrator just walks you through just staying in the present, and she walks you through, narrates each different body part in your body. And by the end, they have 4 or 5 minute long ones that do bring you from like an 8 down to a 6. And then you also, like, as a Christian, I like to investigate the truth of God's word. So if it's some kind of shame or guilt that I'm feeling, I'm going to investigate the truth of God's word. I'm going to investigate the truth of my surroundings, of what's going on, and the truth of the situation. And right, that's when we go into our logical mind and not just in our emotional mind. And then the N is nurture and not take personal. So I'm going to nurture myself, maybe to add to having a healthy relationship with this uncomfortable feeling is I'm going to take a bath. I'm going to take a walk to nurture myself. Or I'm going to not take personal that I felt that way, because we all have feelings and we all have to process them.
Those are great tools. Those are great tools. And here's what I'm going to share. I'm going to share with you one final tool, which is just to disengage from the situation completely. And what do I mean by that? You have to look at this and say, is this situation worth it? So here's what I mean. If this is a family member or a friend or a colleague or coworker that you're having a disagreement with, then it is worth it to try and resolve that and come to an amicable resolution for whatever is happening. To go through everything that Jessica just said, go through the feel, felt, found, all of those things, to deploy all of those resources to fix that problem. But you have to look at the situation and say, is it worth it? Because there's going to be some times when you're at the fast food restaurant and somebody is acting crazy and coming at you, you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is this a scenario that has an upside? 99 times out of 100, no, I'm just going to say 100 times out of 100, because every single video I watched, these did not have good outcomes. No matter what, no matter if one person was calm, the other person wasn't, it was not a good interaction. This is what we call a no-win situation. And you're going to experience those in your life, which means it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter if you win the argument, you're still going to lose. It doesn't matter if you were able to physically overpower and beat that person up, you're still going to lose. There's no way to win in this situation. And I see people get themselves into these situations, into these no-win situations, and they just barricade themselves in and keep fighting from a losing position. Dealing with law enforcement, you can be right. It doesn't matter. You're still going to jail because that police officer is never going to admit that they're wrong, because they lose that authority in the situation. So they will never admit it. That's what the court is for. So if you have a grievance, you take it to the court and the court will handle it. You're never going to win that on the street. It's just never going to happen. I've watched thousands of videos, but they never win it on the street. They may run and get away, but they get caught. You're never going to win that situation. So dealing with an authority figure, law enforcement, an employer, you're never going to, it's a no-win situation.
And it's not saying submit to wrong authority
No.
and just being a doormat. Accountability later, not in the moment.
Right. It's letting yourself get escalated up to that point to where now you're combative against this authority figure, or you're combative against this other person that you don't know. You're not going to win there. You're going to lose every single time, because it's going to be on social media, and it doesn't matter if you were right. There's still going to be half the population who thinks you're wrong. So those are no-win situations. It's not worth your effort. So you have to register this in your mind, that when you see yourself getting in these confrontations, before you get into that amygdala state where your brain is hijacked, to bring yourself out and say, hey, I'm just going to disengage. You're right. I say this all the time on social media. I'll say something and people will go off and go half-cocked and be crazy and say crazy stuff to me. People say crazy stuff to me online that they would never say in person. Trust me, they never say it in person. But they say crazy stuff, and I have to be like, nope, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, there's actually a couple of Proverbs that talks about it. Proverbs 12:15 says, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice, right? So the wise person pauses, reflects, and repents. The foolish person deflects, blames, and defends. It's not just a behavior issue. It's a spiritual issue, spiritual maturity issue as well.
Yeah, it reminds me, that proverb reminds me of this story I heard about these Chinese monks. And so here's how the story goes. The Chinese monks, there is the master monk. He's been there a long time, big old white beard and this awesome big long mustache. And he's sitting there meditating. And this younger junior monk comes up and sits next to him and says, Master, what is the key to happiness? And the older monk rubs his beard and looks down and says, do not argue with stupid people. And the younger monk is a bit indignant and says, I don't believe it. That can't be the key to happiness. And the ole muck stands up and says, "You are right," turns and walks away. The moral of the story is don't argue with stupid people. Don't get yourself into situations that are a no-win situation. We like to do 3 things here on the Mental Health Janitors: educate, empower, and encourage you on your mental health journey. I'm Sergeant Q,
I'm Dr. Jess.
and we're out.